Hi there, this is Mondia on Astral Oracles, and I'm going to channel Hermes slash Mercury, this ancient deity who's of course the deity of travelers, traders, and thieves, but also the psychopompic deity, the one who carries the soul from one realm to another, and also thereby the god of luminous insights, and of course the messenger of the gods, and he's sort of, if you approach him energetically, it's expressed in the word mercurial. So sort of this energy of passageways that doesn't necessarily exist apart from the link that he creates between different, more stable entities. So the god of translations in many ways, and I see him as the Lord that presides over this entire practice. And there are three energies that I allow myself to take into my energy field, even when I'm not channeling, and those are the quanta, or universal cosmic energy. Those are the Arcturians, who I for some reason align with a lot, and it's the Lord Mercury, or Hermes. And it springs from some weird manifestations I've been experiencing these past days. So the other day, I think this Wednesday, which of course is the day of Mercury. By the way, I'm now realizing I met this character who sold vegetables, who was named Michael, and had spent a year in the city of angels, Los Angeles. And well, his intercession, or just meeting him, prevented me from going to the village and buying more cigarettes, because I got all the vegetables I needed here. And and then I forgot some, and so he was standing out by the gate that's next to the church, which is right over here, shouting my name. And that's, I've been aligning more with the angelic, and I really feel like there's some pull calling me home to these worlds. And I personally, I feel like the things that I've been latching onto that sort of kept me grounded here was essentially smoking. And now I quit smoking cannabis, and I quit smoking cigarettes, and I feel much better, but I don't actually know what I'm doing down here anymore, and I can sort of feel this dematerializing pull. And then the next day, after a session, I enter my front door, and then this English couple is scouting my casita, whether or not to rent it afterwards, and they didn't get to. I'll be staying here a little while longer. But the interesting thing was again that. Like I spoke to the dude of this couple, and like it was such an interesting mirroring experience, because I could tell he was sort of expressing all of the things that I have latched onto in my own egoic life, which he then mirrored back to me as something that I sort of feel not connected to anymore. So well, he had traveled the world and lived off photography, and his photography was this sort of it. Well, to my mind, photography is usually the thing that people get into when they want to appear creative, but they really aren't. And it also, looking at his pictures, was essentially just, it seemed like a pretense for him to get women to strip, and then photograph them. And of course, blessings to him if that makes sense. But I could just tell this deep misery in him that he wouldn't recognize, and he was still latching on to his childhood. And if you've ever met, I know a lot of Steiner kids from back home, and it's interesting how the most interesting thing they feel they have to say about themselves is that they went to a Steiner school, which is it's a little weird to me. It's just like, that was your childhood. Why don't you get on with it? Like, I also probably spend 1,000 hours watching reruns of Beverly Hills 90210 with my big sister, but that's not something I necessarily want to return to or announce to people. But it was just like this complete latching on to different types of attachment, which were like somehow amusing to me, because then he was also quick to announce that, oh, I've done ibogaine and I've done all the psychedelic drugs out there. And then when you announce that, it's like, yes, but now I think vipassana is more important. And I've never met anyone who wanted to go to vipassana who didn't have this narcissistic configuration, like the Western pull to that type of discipline where it's, oh, there I can go and I can punish myself for 10 days, and then I get sort of the ticket that says I went to this concert, and I can show that to other people, and then I can derive it, and I can derive their admiration from that, because look at me, how much spiritual attainment I reached from going to a 10-day course. And it's just, dude, if you want to contact yourself, why don't you just sit down and be quiet? Like that's what this discipline is essentially about. So that was kind of amusing to me, and I think it was very visible because like well, and I'm almost sorry to go there, but because he was still latching onto his hair, so he had these rims of hair that were grown wide, and then he was bald in the middle, but had sort of tried to raise his hair to conceal that fact, and it's, having shaved my head for since I was 14, it's kind of amusing to me when people like are unable to let that go. But I do realize as I get older, it has the added benefit of also making me not have to deal with my receding hairline and the vanity and attachment that comes from that. So but it was more like I remember this character within myself, like latching on to psychedelic experiences as something that somehow made me special and unique, or latching on to sexual experiences and partnerships as something that validated me and made me seem like a cool guy, and hopefully in others' eyes, but at least in my own, and latching on to, well, exotic places I could go to, and it's quite common in Northwest Europe, and perhaps in many places, that people sort of measure their self-esteem and how far and long away they can get from their own culture, and yet it's always right there with them, right? We can't escape anything. And so it was just interesting, because to me it was such a mirror of like all the attachments I had, and when he spoke of spirit guides, he also talked about like being sexually attracted to this mermaid guide he had, which was completely goddamn weird to me, because it's like, why don't you connect upwards instead? Because this is sort of just a hypothesis um, of your lust and your longing, and you're attaching to the world that you're bringing out into this symbolic figure that you're then interacting with in what seems spiritual, but is indeed just like an extrapolation of your imagination. And then he talked about like having, now it was only his wounded child that he used to communicate with in this way, which is, of course, I'm sorry, but that's, it's an interesting place where narcissism can go, that it's sort of it's stuck on its own that sense of childlike enclosure, where I just can't let that hurt go. um, and so the reason I wanted to share this, and the reason I think this is interesting, is because I'm being really confronted these days with not feeling attached to anything. And I also realized that my actions and my motivations, insofar as I have any, seem completely surreal to people. And the way to explain this is, well, I've sort of crossed the abyss, so I don't consider myself more dead than alive. I simply just am, and I'm completely indifferent whether or not I'm here and focused in this body or these experiences. So I will be focused in something else, and in many ways I feel like it might be, well, more attractive to dematerialize and go back home. And that's why I wanted to get like the numinous Lord, the Lord of numinous insights and of magic, to comment on this. Like, how is life after life once you've reached this state where you actually don't care, and it's not a depressed state, but it's not an elated state either. Like, where do you go from there? And so let's hear what God Hermes has to say about this. there's a cosmic joke at play, and it's the cosmic giggle that's running over your lips that is still what keeps you bound here. So notice that even when you are not necessarily amused by attainment, you are still amused by the striving for attainment. There is a mirror here to be held up to the world. There is an artwork to still be performed. And this is the idea, dear one. And we are speaking to the vessel that we are coming through, knowing that he will receive this message afterwards and that he is being instructed now. It is the idea that you are still trying to express something that is rich, new, and different. You are trying to magically fold the laws of reality around you, and so this practice that you have moved into, it is indeed a practice where you keep connecting to things, where you keep growing this expansive field of what consciousness may contain while still being centered in the physical. And that is indeed the practice that keeps you anchored here. This is the work that you want to do. And of course, there does not need to be any striving for results in this, but know that there is a great hidden joke within these things that you do appreciate. It is, in a sense, the braying of the goats, the laughing that you hear from the edge of the village that still draws you into this place. Well, what is out there? What do you want to reach from this? Well, nothing, but you would like the company of animal companions that whisper secrets around the magic residing in the herbs, around the other beings they have seen walking the earth that are hidden to human beings. There is still a discovery here to be had, and so I do not only carry beings from the realms of the dead, but I carry them into unknown worlds. And how would these worlds become known to men if there weren't people exploring them? How would they indeed become visible? And so notice that there are still things that hold up your identity, and these things are indeed the expansion of identity itself into something else. This code, it can be worked to the advantage of humankind. And so this great artwork that you are trying to perform within your body, within the alchemical centers of your brain, your heart, and your navel point, these are all brewing new concoctions, and these concoctions are like magic potions, and these magic potions, well, they do have a type of rich flavor that is yet to be explored and tasted by you and by others. And so would you miss out on the great feast? Even though it might be a feast of fools, it is still a feast that, well, where jesters abound and funny things are happening all around. It's the image of the circus that you in many ways are moving into, this great wonderful circle where everything is expressed in deep gestures of jest. This is something that still tickles your fancy. This is something that still calls your curiosity. It's the ability to perform unknown tricks. It's the ability to explore new sides of the human body, new sides of the human mind, and indeed to explore the human soul, to expand it into new venues. And so notice also the other message that you have been called to bring through this working with the Fae and the working with these shape-shifting entities that, well, they take human beings for a ride and they offer to take them back to themselves, or they offer to take them to places where they will be made fools of in their own eyes in order to teach them a lesson about the folly of striving. This is indeed things that you are greatly called to reveal, knowing that there is multitude of aspects to everything. You like to dance around these phenomenon and reveal their backside, so to speak. It's the great mooning of the world that you are performing, and well, we ask you to be still and not laugh too much, but notice that this laughter, it is indeed the pure force of life that's moving through you, and this pure force of life, it will not be denied. And so when Michael appeared in your vision, materializing, calling your name, this was to let you know that you were moving upwards and towards the connection and the steady protection of the heavens, that there are manifestations that indeed will come forward, and these manifestations, they will begin to shield this practice, making it less vulnerable, and thereby also making your explorations the more steady, the more steadfast, and the more stable in their appearance. So this artwork of alchemy that you still long to create, it is supported by the angelic realms, even though it also relates to those things you, for instance, describe as narcissism, the latching on to identity codes, the wish to announce themselves. And notice again that there's a great joke at play here for you that you cannot help but to share with people, because you find it so amusing that you, having no identity, you become a mirror that upsets people, and so they are apparently very keen to announce themselves to you. They are very keen to show you all the things that they have gathered, all the attainments that they are proud of, all the stories that make them feel as someone rather than no one. And that is weird to you, because you indeed feel as no one, or a nobody, we could almost say. And why then would people impress you? Well, it is because they sense that this blank mirror is somehow bringing forward something that's to many of them unpleasant, and to others very alluring. This is a type of frequency that, as you cultivate it, and indeed you have cultivated it to a great degree, and now it is stabilizing, that you will encounter much in your life, that certain people are drawn to you, and the expansiveness that you bring forward in them, and other people feel very unsettled by the fact that you mirror the futility of their striving back to them, that you realize that, well, whatever stories they tell, they are essentially telling themselves, and then only secondarily they are trying to use these to simply operate in the world. You understand that codes of operation are exactly that. They are only manuals that will have been written from unconscious places, and then these manuals, they have their limitations in the way that they operate the system. But indeed, what would the system do if it's disconnected from, well, the place where codes are essentially rewritten? That is the place where mind and spirit and body, they meet within the heart center. If this place is disconnected, how then can you do anything but to stack up things to fixate you? And so you noticed again this strange synchronicity that this person was telling you about, him being gravely ill from having been bitten by a spider. And you noticed that this was a weird parallel to the fact that you yourselves have had the experience of an insect bite that has seemed to set you free in so many ways. And know then that the closer you move into these transcendental experiences, the closer you connect to this practice that you call channeling, or this communion with non-physical, higher dimensional energies and insights, or the closer you move into the encounter with sacred substances, that is, things that, well, can reveal your true nature as it appears to you in that moment to you, or can lead you down into new layers of attachment and grasping and clinging. The closer you move into the work of yoga, for instance, or other transcendental techniques, you will find these patterns more greatly juxtaposed, the pattern between the latching on, the attempt of the ego to harvest something from this and to restructure itself, and the movement of spirit into, or yes, versus the movement of spirit, or the setting free of great energies. And that is also why you find veneers so amusing because you yourself see yourself as a type of grinning skeleton that speaks the words that are seen so many places, that will hold that well, as that speak to everybody. As you once were, so was I, and as I am now, so you will be. These are the words of death, but they are also the words of illumination. And these words of illumination, those are essentially what you enjoy to bring through, that you still enjoy to play around with this great writing of a cosmic joke that is ceaseless and whose punchline is written in the very first word, but are only apparent to those who choose to hear it. And so that message is helpful. The idea that, well, all prophecy, all luminous insight, it is a blessing for those who choose to hear it and a warning for those who do not. And that with that we will leave you, I, Hermes, Mercury, whatever you wish to call me, the luminous Lord of Transactions, I will leave you this day with a smile and with the great and helpful insight that, well, before you put your feet on your head and your head below the ground, is there still not things to be attained? You can bend so far forward over yourself that your head moves up your ass, and when your head then moves up your ass, then, well, how does it go from there, not being able to retreat? There is only forward movement in this lifetime, and therefore try to move from that perfect circle you have created in that circular space, and then into new liberties, new ideas, and indeed new unknown vistas in the smelly dark that you find yourself. Uh, that was very helpful to me. Hope you enjoyed, guys.